Salve Discipuli. Welcome to Lesson 39 Grammar, and welcome to one of the most challenging concepts you guys have seen yet, the indirect statement. That's the indirect statement. Okay, we're going to look at some examples of these and talk through what is going on grammatically. Okay, we're going to start with sentence number 1 here. Militem ambulare scio. Alright, so hopefully we're able to recognize our main verb is scio. Hopefully we're able to recognize an infinitive in this sentence. Do you guys see the infinitive? Ambulare. Okay, that RE ending tells us it's an infinitive. And then hopefully we recognize what often accompanies an infinitive, an accusative word, militem. So we talked earlier about how when we have an infinitive and an accusative, the big question is which to translate first. Well, when we have what's called an indirect statement, there's going to be just a little more to think about besides what to translate first. In fact, you'll know if you have an indirect statement which thing to translate first. It's just going to translate a little differently. So, let's just back up here. Let's look at this sentence. Scio means I know. Ambulare means to walk, and militem is the accusative form of soldier. So it would seem this sentence is saying, I know the soldier to walk. Okay, think about that for a second. I know the soldier to walk. What do you think that means? We obviously don't speak like that in English. What does this sentence probably mean? Okay, the answer is, it means I know that the soldier is walking. Okay? So what I did, I went from my main verb, I inserted the English word that. Okay? I went from my main verb, I inserted the English word that, then I went to my accusative and my infinitive. Okay? But I didn't translate the infinitive like an infinitive. I said, I know that the soldier is walking. I translated my infinitive like a normal verb. Okay? That's what happens in an indirect statement. Let's look at another example. Number 2. We've got a main verb here, gentlemen. Does everybody see it? Vides. Has everybody spotted the infinitive? Amare. And then finally, we're looking for accusatives because we have infinitives. That's accusative, but may is also accusative. So we end up with 2 accusatives. Okay? It stands to reason that one of them will go in front of the infinitive, just like up here, and that the other will go behind it. Okay? And we're still going to have to insert our all-important word, that. So, vides is our main verb. Vides means, think about the subject here, you see that. Okay, you see that. Then we go to our accusative. Our first accusative, reginam, which means queen. We have our infinitive amare, which means to love. And we have our other accusative, me, which means me. So you see the queen to love me. Okay, that sounds weird in English. How about you see that the queen loves me? So again, we took this infinitive and we translated it as if it were a normal verb and not an infinitive at all. And we inserted the word that. Okay? So, here's a good question at this point. How do we know to do this? Okay? How do we know that these two are what are called indirect statements? And how do we know that they should be translated in a special way? So, here's what makes an indirect statement. First of all, indirect statements have what I will call, this is weird, a head verb. Okay, that's head verb. Okay? A head verb is any verb that describes an action that you do with your head. Like, skio, know, I know with my head. See, wides, I see with my head. Say, I say using my head. Okay? Hear, I hear using my head, right? Because my ears are on my head, which is normal. All right? So those are all head verbs. Know, believe, say, think, hear, announce. Okay, those are all examples of head verbs. If you have a head verb and then you have an accusative and an infinitive, you probably have an indirect statement. So the next part of an indirect statement after the head verb is an accusative. Okay? This is terrible. I need a new system. Okay, let's do this. Okay, sorry about that, gentlemen. So an indirect statement is made up of three parts. A head verb, which is any verb that has to do with something you do with your head. See, hear, believe, know, think, say. Okay? Then there will be an accusative, but ultimately this accusative acts like a subject and not like a direct object. All right? Consider our previous examples. Consider our previous example. I know that the soldier is walking. Soldier becomes the subject of walking. I know that the soldier is walking. So that's why we call this thing an accusative subject. All right? That's the second part of an indirect statement. The third part of an indirect statement, technical difficulties. The third part of an indirect statement is an infinitive verb. Okay, we saw that in all our examples. Okay, we had an accusative, then we had an infinitive verb. If you see head verb, accusative, infinitive verb, you're probably dealing with an indirect statement. And as you saw in the two examples I did, for translation purposes, you are going to want to translate the word that after your head verb, but before your accusative subject. And that will give you an indirect statement. And of course, this infinitive, you're not going to translate like an infinitive. You're going to translate it like a regular verb. Okay? So you see a head verb, you see accusative subject, you see an infinitive. You know you're going to translate the word that after the head verb, and you know you're not going to translate the infinitive like an infinitive. It's going to be like a regular verb. Okay? So let's see if we can put this to practice. Let's consider number 3. All right? We have credimus. That's a main verb, and it means believe, which is something you do with your head. Okay? Do we have an infinitive in here? Yes, we do. We have victum esse. That's an example of a perfect passive infinitive. 2 parts, second part is esse. A perfect passive infinitive. Do we have an accusative here? Yes, we do. So we have a head verb, accusative, infinitive. This is an indirect statement. And remember, when we translate it, we're going to insert the word that after the head verb. We're going to translate the infinitive like a normal verb. But please note, this is a passive infinitive, so we need to keep this passive. So, credimus. We believe that, there's the word that, we believe that the leader, this comes from winco, winkera, wiki, victus, which means conquer. We need to keep it passive, and it was also perfect tense. So we believe that the leader was conquered. All right? We believe that the leader was conquered. Literally, this says we believe the leader to have been conquered, but in English, we're more likely to say we believe that the leader was conquered. All right? Let's try another one. Number 4. We actually have a nominative in here for once. That's fun. We have a main verb of negat, which is a head verb because it means deny. You tend to deny things with your head. We have a difficult to spot infinitive in the word ludi, coming from ludo, ludera, ludi, or ludo, ludera, luci, which means to deceive or to mock. And do we have an accusative, something we would need for an indirect statement? There it is. This is our accusative that's going to act like a subject. So, the mother denies that the son, and then here's a present passive infinitive, but we're not going to translate it like an infinitive. The mother denies that the son is mocked by his friends. The mother denies that the son is mocked by his friends. We have our nominative, then we have our head verb, accusative subject, infinitive verb. We insert the word that after the head verb. We translate the infinitive like a normal verb. Let's see another example. All right. Down here we have a main verb of putant. That means to think. Most of us do that with our heads. We have the word esse, which is an infinitive, right? Sum esse fui futurus, the infinitive of the word to be. And then we have an accusative in nuntium and in verum. So this is another indirect statement. Head verb, accusative subject, infinitive verb. And that means for our translation we have to insert the word that, and we can't translate the infinitive like an infinitive. So, they think that the message is true. Literally, they think the message to be true, but more than likely in English we will say they think that the message is true. Alright, now let me show you how this gets a little bit complicated and then I'll call it a lesson. Number 6, we have almost the exact same sentence. You have putant, you have fuisse as your infinitive, that's a perfect active infinitive, and you have nuntium and verum. Basically the same sentence as number 5. The only difference is the tense of the infinitive has changed. Up here it was present, down here it's perfect. Okay? So what that is really doing is that is telling you that since this infinitive is perfect, that this action happened before this one. Alright? A perfect tense infinitive tells you an action happened before the main verb. Okay? This present tense infinitive up here tells you that the action happened at the same time as the main verb. They think right now that the message right now is true. Down here, this happens before the thinking. They think right now that the message, it's got to happen before, was true. Alright? They think that the message was true. Alright, let's consider one more sentence and then we'll be done. Nuntium futurum esse verum putant. Hey, this is basically the same sentence again. We've got the head verb putant. We've got the infinitive futurum esse. We've got accusatives in nuntium and verum. Alright? So, this is a future tense active infinitive. Up here we had a perfect active, here we had a present active. Present active was the same time as the main verb. Perfect active was before the main verb. So what do you think a future active will signify? If this was same time, this was time before, this is going to be time after. Okay, so that means that this action happens after this one. So they think right now that the message will be true later on. They think that the message will be true. Okay, so this is a really tricky concept. Present tense infinitive is the same time as the head verb. Perfect tense infinitive happens before the head verb. Future tense infinitive happens after the head verb. Okay, that's a lot. That's a lot. Gentlemen, what's most important that you take from this is this right here. You need to be aware that an indirect statement contains 3 things: a head verb, an accusative subject, and an infinitive verb. You need to be aware that we need to translate the word that after the head verb, and you need to remember that we do not translate this infinitive like an infinitive. We're going to translate it like a main or like a regular verb. Alright, we'll talk more about this in class, but I want you to have this stuff down. Head verb, accusative subject, infinitive verb, insert the word that. That's an indirect statement. All right. Wale tadiscipuli.